the universe's mistakes, like socks and sandals, and whatever that thing is.
Welcome to the many interpretations of Platybelodon. Platybelodon is a proboscidean that lived in the middle Miocene of what is now Asia and North Caucasus. It is a very strange creature, probably most popular by this image right here. It's oftentimes thought as like a very strange looking elephant, and while it is true that it's related to modern day elephants, it's not quite a true elephant itself. It's more so just like a distant cousin. But that doesn't take away from how strange this animal truly was. Now, there's not too many media depictions out there. I'm sure that you already knew that, but the ones that we do have are really fascinating. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So first we'll start off with the stop motion project known as the Age of Mammals. We got this shot of a Platybelodon right here. Now it kind of blends in with the background, so it's kind of difficult to make out a lot of the details, but from what I could tell, this is a fairly accurate depiction of Platybelodon for the time. Now, when Platybelodon was first found, obviously there's been a lot of confusion about what exactly it looked like in life and how exactly it used certain traits that it possessed. One of those traits being the very strange lower jaw that had these huge flat tusks, the incisors towards the front of the jaw. Another thing that always sparked a lot of confusion was the upper jaw, like how the upper jaw would actually sit on the rest of the mouth. Now, at this time, it was believed that Platybelodon had a huge sort of flat lip that covered the top portion of its mouth. And that's how it's portrayed right here. You also do have the incisors on top, which are, of course, the tusks that Platybelodon did have. It had two tusks on top, and of course, the lower flat tusks on the bottom. The rest of the body looks fairly similar to an elephant's, though just a little bit more stylized, I suppose. We don't have much postcranial elements of Platybelodon, so a lot of that would boil under speculation. So because of that, I'll mostly be looking at the skull in these depictions. Although it was noted that it seems like Platybelodon had limbs that suggest that the animal was a little bit more agile and lightly built compared to other proboscideans. Now, this is a fine first depiction, but of course, our understanding of Platybelodon will change over time, and I think I'll get the chance to talk about that a little bit more with the next depictions. Now, next up, we have Kratz Creatures, which has this really stylized animated version of the animal right here. Again, it has like more of a broad upper lip, I suppose, but it kind of looks like a combination with a trunk in a sort of way. Nowadays, it is believed that Platybelodon did have a huge trunk on top of on the top portion of its skull, as opposed to this really huge flat lip that was portrayed in the previous one, and of course, this piece of art right here. Now, this one does have the upper incisors as well as the lower ones that, of course, make those really strange flat teeth on the lower jaw. And yeah, no, it's mainly just a stylized depiction, so I don't know if you'd really be looking for accuracy in this, but this is like not too far off from even the modern day understanding of the animal. Next up is from Captain Planet and the Planeteers. We have this one right here that appears to be digging with its lower tusks. And again, it does have more of like a broad trunk on top. Now, the digging is something that was suspected for Platybelodon for quite a while. Particularly digging in like marshy environments to scoop up some like water plants in order to consume that. But now it doesn't seem like Platybelodon used those lower tusks for that. There has been some analysis done on those tusks, and it seems like there is a significant amount of wear, which implies that it was using it for something that was a little bit more rough than scooping up some softer vegetation from like a marshy environment. It seems likely that Platybelodon would use those tusks to potentially saw down branches while holding onto that branch with its trunk, because it is possible that Platybelodon had more of a traditional trunk, a little bit more elephant-like, as opposed to the structure that you see on this depiction, for example. It's also possible that it would use its tusks to strip bark off of trees. So Platybelodon might have had a pretty interesting diet overall. But this does seem like a fairly accurate depiction of Platybelodon for the time. We also do have this monsters of the past, weird and wild creatures. I'm sure that many of us recognize these things. And again, the upper jaw is more so just like a flat, really broad lip as opposed to an actual functioning trunk. But the lower jaw looks pretty good, and the upper incisors look pretty good as well. It's really fun to look at these ones because they're always just so dynamic and just so full of life whenever you stare at them. They're really cool pieces of art. And then we do have Ice Age, incredibly stylized in a lot of ways, and it still does have that upper jaw that is just like a huge lip that we've mentioned time and time again. But I've always liked the way that these guys looked. Of course, they are incredibly stylized, and they're just really fun to look at. It's really cool that Platybelodon even had a like even a somewhat role to play in the Ice Age franchise, even though these guys, of course, lived before the Ice Age, before the Pleistocene. But the Ice Age movies are kind of like a melting pot of a lot of different time periods, kind of like a lot of other projects. But yeah, here they are. Still very cool to see. And then we do have the amazing world of Gumball. I know this is probably one of the most random inclusions right here, but this moment always stuck with me. It's like when they go into the void and Gumball's enemy was like mentioning how this was a place for all of like the universe's mistakes, and he like points out the Platybelodon saying that the Platybelodon was a mistake. I was like, that's so sad, man. Look at that creature. Isn't that a beautiful creature? It is just a beautiful creature. Now, they do have an outdated design, mostly just with that top lip. Again, in the fact that it is a lip as opposed to a trunk. But it's still really cool to see it in this show, and it fits the show, honestly, like a very strange show like, The Amazing World of Gumball. You could have Platybelodon, he's even like a returning character, if you ask me. I like its design. It's like a really traditional elephant-like look, I suppose. Yeah, no, it's that I just think that it's like mostly just a funny joke though. Next up is Jurassic Park Builder. We have this handsome fella right here that still has basically an upper lip, but it looks a little bit thinner, which is kind of similar, kind of sort of similar to a trunk. So it's kind of a step in the correct direction. The lower jaw is correct though, and it just really emphasizes how strange of an animal that truly was. The upper incisors are present, and it's got a build that's a little bit more similar to an elephant. And then in Dinosaur Park Primeval Zoo, I think we have our first modern, like up to date reconstruction of Platybelodon right here, because it seems that it actually has a proper trunk as opposed to just a very wide upper lip. And all of the tusks are indeed present, and it has a build that's a little bit more similar to an elephant, which it's fair to reconstruct it more so like an elephant because they were like again, they are cousins to elephants. They are all proboscideans, so it makes sense to make them look like that. I also really like the colors present here. All the rest of them have been fairly gray, very similar to elephants for the most part, but this one included some like reds and some tans and some I guess yellows here, and it just makes it stand out a little bit more. So I think it's fairly cool. And now, next up, we have fossils and archaeology. It does indeed have Platybelodon, which is really awesome. That's my bad. I grabbed this spawn egg because it was right next to the Platybelodon DNA. So I was like, oh yeah, that's got to be it. But it's a platypus spawn egg from Alex's mom's. Perry the platypus. All right, here's the Platybel. Oh wow, it is huge. Yeah, so this is the Platybelodon in Fossils and Archaeology, and it is one of the most accurate ones that we have looked at on this list because it's got a trunk, for example. It's got a trunk and a huge trunk at that, instead of having that giant lip that we've seen for the most part. It also does have that very strange looking lower jaw with the incisors that are a lot more flat. And, the more traditional, longer incisors that would see on more elephants on the upper jaw. So it's a fantastic depiction, and look at that! Isn't that cool? I really do like it. I think that the developers of fossils and archaeology do a really solid job with these models. Like that is just so cool looking. Um, the sounds are of course just elephant sounds, but which is that's fair. But yeah, no, this is definitely one of the most accurate ones that we've looked at on this list because it just has everything that, well, again, we're mostly looking at the skull with these depictions because that's what we mostly know about Platybelodon. And it's got the skull pretty correct, just mostly with that trunk. That trunk is the correct thing about it. So yeah, awesome job. You are definitely not a platypus, my friend. That's so cool. But yeah, that is fossils and archaeology. Creative Beast Studios, of course, have been teasing their Platybelodon for quite a while. I want this figure so bad because look at it. This is also a more up to date reconstruction of Platybelodon because it has its trunk. Again, to reiterate, it would use that trunk to, of course, grab vegetation or to hold on to branches as it used its tusks, those flat tusks on the bottom, to saw down branches or to scrape bark or something like that. That's what the wear on those tusks seem to suggest. So that's likely the type of thing that it was doing to get its meal. And it's just so cool. This is such a cool reconstruction right here. I haven't mentioned the ears at all because, of course, ears don't really fossilize, so we don't have much of an understanding of what those look like. But this looks like a pretty valid interpretation of it. And the rest of the body is fairly similar to an elephant's, which again is a fair route to take. And but yeah, just the lower jaw is such a standout to me, and that trunk also looks amazing. Probably the most accurate, or amongst the most accurate ones that we have looked at on this list. And it is a great way to end the video, like end the list essentially. So yeah, like I said, there's not too many depictions of Platybelodon out there, but all of them really emphasize how strange of an animal it is, because even after we learn a little bit more about it and after we determine what it was likely eating and like determine that it likely had a trunk, it's still a very strange animal. And of course, that's all because of that lower jaw. And you know, Platybelodon's not alone in that fact. Of course, there was other members of its family that had a similar lower jaw, but I feel like Platybelodon is oftentimes like the poster child for it. Most people think of Platybelodon when they think of elephant relatives that have structures like that. So it's cool that it showed up as much as it did, but I certainly think that there's room for it to show up a little bit more in the future. And there might be some that I missed. Of course, you know, I do have my Discord server help me out with these types of videos as well. And I went through all of them, and I don't think there was any that was missed. Maybe there might be. There most likely is. But I'm sure that you guys will, of course, let us know. But yeah, it was cool to talk about Platybelodon a little bit, and I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed making it, and until next time, have an awesome day.